Hey guys, it's me, Greed here. Listen, over the course of 8 years of playing Overwatch, I have quit quite a few times. But at least during those times that I had quit, I at least still wanted to play Overwatch to some degree, if you know what I mean. Like, I would quit the game and I wouldn't have played for 2 weeks and I'd go, I'm kind of feeling like playing some Genji, kind of miss that feeling of Genji, kind of want to dash on some support players and make them cry in chat, you know what I'm saying? But as of recently, I will say this is the only time, and this is bizarre, this is the only time in 8 years since Overwatch's release where I genuinely, absolutely have quite literally zero desire to play the game. Zero. I have been playing other games. I've been playing a lot of DayZ. I've been loving it. I fell in love with that game again. Played some Marvel Rivals. Listen, I'm just going to say I've pioneered a new playstyle of Marvel Rivals that you will likely see in pro play. It is that strong. Don't take my word on that, I am exaggerating. But I did create a playstyle I've never seen anyone do before, and I don't think I've ever lost a game doing it. So, there's that. But I kind of wanted to talk about why Overwatch is kind of failing right now. Because it seems like one of those things where a lot of people can't really put their finger on it. The less experienced players don't really know what's going on, and the more hardcore players thinks it's one thing, and it's a bit of both. I would say the reason that Overwatch right now is kind of feeling a bit empty, a bit lifeless, is because Overwatch was a game that was built to try and appease everyone. For example, the game released, it was a hyper casual game. Everyone that played it was a casual player. There were a couple of competitive players, but ranked wasn't really a thing yet when it came out, so it was mostly casual players. Well, then they made the decision that, actually, well, this is going to be a hyper competitive game. They added a rank mode, all that stuff, and then a bunch of casual players were like, I'm gonna yawn. A bunch of casual players were like, a bunch of casual players were like, you know what, this isn't really a game for me, I don't really like the competitive part. So they lost some casual players, but then a bunch of competitive players were like, this is pretty sick. And they joined the game, and the game grew even more because all the competitive players came flooding in. So Overwatch initially had a really beautiful thing. It had lots of casual players, and it had lots of competitive players, and everyone was enjoying it. But as time went on, you generally have to pick a side. But Overwatch failed to do so over the years that it existed. There was never really a moment where they decided that one or the other was better, if you know what I mean. They kind of just decided that they would try to cater to both, which doesn't work. Because what happens is, let's say the game is really casual right now, but they want it to be competitive. If they make competitive changes to the game, the casual player base, at least some of them, aren't going to like that. And so some of them will quit. But maybe you'll attract a couple of competitive players, but you'll usually lose more than you gain making changes like that. So it will bleed a couple of casual players, but it will gain a couple of competitive players. And then we're going to make a change for the casual players. Then, a couple of competitive players are going to leave. And then, we'll make a change for the competitive players. And then some of the casual players leave again. And then, vice versa. And you just keep going and going and going until we're at this moment where the game isn't for the casual player. The casual player's not having a good time. They're not enjoying it. And the competitive players also have been fucked for 8 years. And they're like, yeah, I don't like this either. So now you have a game that's made for both casual players and competitive players, but yet is made for neither, because you can't have a game for both. They're two different ecosystems, and the casual one can exist inside of a competitive one to some degree, and a competitive one can exist in a casual one to some degree, but those things have to be natural. You cannot force a casual player base in a competitive game, and you cannot force a competitive player base in a casual game. Those things will happen naturally as long as you stay on the path you're staying on. A game balanced entirely for casual players can still have a competitive scene. Take Dead by Daylight, for example. Now, obviously, that game's balancing is not exactly the most casual thing in the world, where they're doing like Fine 2 weeks and stuff, but generally speaking, it's a party game where the majority of the time they're balancing for the casual audience in mind, yet there are competitive players that play the game and enjoy the game because people are naturally going to take it seriously, even if it's a casual experience. But that's because they've stuck to balancing the game for that one demographic. Once you start balancing for different demographics, as you go through a patch cycle, you're going to bleed more players than you're going to gain, because every patch, you're making a large group of players unhappy. A small percentage of those players will quit. You will then try to appease those players by patching the game for them in the next patch, which will keep some of those players, but will lose some of the other demographic. And eventually you just have to make the decision of we're either a casual game or a competitive game. You cannot be both. You can have both player pools, but your game cannot physically be both of those things at the same time, if you know what I mean. But over the years, Overwatch has tried to do that, and all it's done is lead to the fact that no one wants to play the game anymore. And that's just how it is. The competitive players aren't having any fun because of the patches that are trying to appease the casuals, and the casuals aren't having any fun because of the patches that are trying to appease the competitive players. For example, the competitive players absolutely cannot stand shit in the game like Kiriko and Lifeweaver and Moira and Widow and things like that. They absolutely despise it, but it's for the casual player base. And the casual player base isn't having any fun because people are counterpicking and mass swapping and talking shit in quick play and hyper tryhard in quick play penalties, quick play MMR, just dog shit like that, where the casual player doesn't give a fuck about any of this. I mean, look at my video where I say that casual players love competitive design, and they generally do. And the reason for that is because casual players are not complete idiots. They don't want the game played for them. They want to play the game themselves. The casual player is the one that is most effective by casual design, or most affected by casual design, because it's the one that involves the least amount of human error, meaning that casual players that tend to be a little bit worse at the game tend to also lose to the things that require less actual input from a player, meaning there is more done automatically for the person playing the easier character. Therefore, the person that's casual and then a little bit worse at the game doesn't really get to enjoy the hero they like to play anymore, because the hero they're playing against that might be good against their hero requires less human input and therefore has less potential for human error, therefore it's less outplayability, and it just feels like shit to play. So the casual player and the competitive player aren't having fun. That's a fact. And the player base is also losing players. That's a fact. Look at the Steam charts. People are going to maul about this, but Steam charts say that Overwatch has lost about 25% of its player base in the last month alone. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, that's Steam. You don't know the Battle.net numbers. You don't know the console numbers and shit like that. Well, the thing is that may be true that I don't know those numbers, but it would be a little odd to assume that it lost 25% of its player base on Steam and then didn't lose similar numbers on other platforms. Like, I could get it 25% on Steam, maybe it lost 10% on Battle.net, maybe it lost 15% on Battle.net, maybe it lost 5% on console. Either way, the reality is that even if we don't know the numbers, we know the player base is going down. And people should be concerned about that. The devs should be concerned about that. But it seems that no one cares. This is the game I love. People don't really understand this. The reason I complain about it and mold about it so much and bitch about it and cry about it is because I love the game. I'm so deeply passionate and in love with Overwatch, and I have been for 8 years. It's my favorite game. I love this game. I love everything about this game. I love the hero design. I love the competitiveness. I love the uniqueness. I love the way it plays. Everything. Everything about this game. I absolutely love it. And to see it die from shitty dev decisions, it makes me very upset, because the game is genuinely not that hard to fix. They just don't give a fuck. They clearly don't care, because if they did care, they wouldn't have shit in the game like Illari. And people might say, well, Illari's not that good right now, and that is my exact reasoning for complaining about shit like this, because people don't actually know what's good and what's bad right now, because the game is so confusing. Why is it that Sleep Dart lasts a certain amount of time for one hero, or one class of hero, not the same for another? Why is it that Illari can do full headshot damage to tanks, but no one else can? Why is it that Hog gains 25% less ult charge for shooting Hog than you do every other tank, but you already gain 25% less ult charge for shooting tanks, you gain 25% even less for shooting Hog? Why are the numbers so confusing? Nobody even knows half the shit in the game that they change anymore, because they're trying to tweak shit that doesn't matter. So here's what you do, okay? Look at a game like CSGO. Why is it that that game was probably the most competitive FPS game ever made, ever since like Quake and shit like that, but that's for old people, right? Why is it that the case, yet it's got a big casual audience too? How is it the fact that it's the most competitive game ever, to some degree, but yet garners a large casual audience anyway? It's because Counter-Strike said from the very start, we are a competitive game. We will balance the game for competitive players. And yet, the casual audience still loved it because they stuck to a certain demographic. And those casual players, even though they were casual players and not competitive players, aligned with it to some degree and therefore stuck around to play the game. But when you change the game so constantly in Overwatch, the game isn't even competitive or casual anymore. It's bullshit. People don't like things like Kiriko in the game. The casual player hates it because there's minimal human error to be achieved, and therefore, well, it just feels like shit to play against because you can't outplay it. But also, they don't like playing against it because if you're a really good Kiriko player, you just perma-flank the back lane and kill the supports all day, and they feel like they can't do anything about it. And the fucking competitive player despises Kiriko because a Kiriko playing absolutely brain dead in her back lane is still hyper competitive in their match. And even though they may seem like they're trolling to some degree, it doesn't matter because their character's so OP regardless. So the competitive player's not having any fun because they feel like they're getting fucked by the fact that the character's OP, and the casual player doesn't have any fun because they feel like they can't do anything because of the lack of human error on the casual side. It's almost like the casual player base and the competitive player base tend to actually agree on a lot of things, yet everyone thinks that it's completely different. People think that casual players love Moira. No, they don't. They hate Moira. Look at my video. Casual players love competitive designing over it. Casual players fucking hate Moira. They hate Moira more than competitive players do. Because at least competitive players can outplay a Moira to some degree. The casual player doesn't know what's going on. He just wants to play fucking Torb. He likes Torb's backstory. He goes, I'm a dwarf guy with a hammer. And he plays Torb. You know? He doesn't care. He doesn't even know... He doesn't even know what a Genji is. He doesn't care. You know what I'm saying? But that's just the game we play, I guess. When you try to balance for every demographic, it turns out that you get 0 of those demographics and you lose a large portion of your player base. Tip for Blizzard, if you watch this, if you want to fix your game, decrease automatic input and increase human error, and people will play your game again. Even if you don't fully fix it, fully rework it, it doesn't matter. Just decrease the amount of automatic input and increase the amount of human error. You'll get a more competitive game and people will have more fun with it. There you go. That's just one of the 1,000 things they need to change. So, in case you don't understand, get rid of the aimbot healing, get rid of the aimbot beams, get rid of the free damage, the free value, make it so that everything is more complex, if that would be the correct word, but not really. Make everything simple. Chess is an extremely simple game, and it's hyper competitive. You know, Counter-Strike on paper, very simple game, hyper competitive. Overwatch needs to be that again. Overwatch used to be that. Game's relatively simple, and it became very competitive because of the slight nuances and things like that. But, you know, those really, really important parts of the game. How something so simple can be mastered, right? I think that's the route they should take. Anyway, I love you. I hope you all have a good day. I hope you're eating dinner or something, or having a great day. I love you all. Have a great day. I love all of you. You mean the world to me. Goodbye. I'll see you guys in a bit. Goodbye. Bye.